Chuck Connors was a well-liked actor, professional baseball player, and basketball star, but his role in The Rifleman is what he is most famous for. But Connors finally spoke out before he died, letting Hollywood know a terrible secret. Why did he keep this secret hidden for so long? And what was it? Before we can talk about his shocking confession, we need to know more about the man behind the cowboy image. Chuck Connors left from Brooklyn, New York, in the year 1921. The Connors family moved to the United States from Ireland, where Kevin Joseph Aloysius was born. As a child growing up during the Great Depression, Chuck learned from his folks how important it is to keep going even when things get tough. His baseball and other sports skills were very good when he was young. People in the neighborhood noticed how good he was at baseball and gave him a sports scholarship to a prep school. With this chance, Chuck was able to play basketball and baseball, which he loved. The next stop on Chuck and Code 39 sports trip was Seton Hall University. He stood out on the baseball and basketball fields while he was there. When he was in college, people started calling him Chuck. It is said that he would often yell, "Chuck it to me," to get bowlers to throw harder. His infectious joy won over his teammates and showed signs of the magnetic personality that would help him as an actor. After Chuck and Hashtag 39 finished from college, his athletic career took a big turn for the better. His skills were hired by the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1940. It would take 10 years to get to the top level from here. This was the first step. Chuck worked hard and spent a lot of time during this time to improve his skills and get past problems. After a lot of hard work, he made it to the major leagues with the Dodgers in 1949. This accomplishment showed how committed and determined Chuck and Code 39 were to reach their goals. Chuck played baseball in the big leagues for a short time, but it was exciting. He was sent back to the minor leagues after only 5 weeks with the Brooklyn Dodgers, where he had one at-bat. Some people might have been upset, but Chuck saw this as a turning point in his life. His first short stint was with the Dodgers in 1951. The next short stint was with the Chicago Cubs. He agreed to play for the Los Angeles Angels and used the Hashtag 39 later that year with a minor league team. There was no way Chuck saw this as a loss. He saw it as a lucky break. He knew he wound in Hashtag 39, made it big in baseball, but the switch let him try acting, which was something he had never done before. When Chuck moved to Los Angeles, the center of the movie business, he was able to find new possibilities. It took Chuck and Hashtag 39 a while to get used to acting. Hollywood agents were drawn to him because he was physically strong and looked good. He got small roles in movies and TV shows. When they were first made, these parts often had to do with sports, players, or coaches. That being said, Chuck worked hard to improve his acting skills, and he quickly started getting more varied roles. Someone in charge of casting called him the Diamond and Hashtag 39's Laurence Olivier after seeing Chuck and Hashtag 39's pranks in The Dugout. Chuck got his big break in 1952 with the movie Pat and Mike, which also starred Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. This chance was very important to Chuck Miller's rise in Hollywood. In the 1957 movie Old Yeller, he played a strict father. This role really showed how versatile he is as an actress. It also helped him get ready for his big break in 1958's The Rifleman, which was his first major part. On this show, Chuck played the part of an Old West hero called Lucas McCain. To get ready for the part, he learned how to shoot, ride horses, and do stunts on horses. His 6'5" height and rugged good looks made him a good fit for Western parts. Chuck got a lot of attention on TV for playing McCain in The Rifleman. Chuck and Hashtag 39's hopes of becoming a baseball hero were dashed, but he found a more satisfying way to fame and happiness through acting. In 1958, people went crazy for the first episode of The Rifleman, which aired on ABC. Chuck and 39's careers changed a lot when this happened. It was easy to tell that The Rifleman was different from other movies because of its high production standards and interesting plot. Chuck was very important to the success of the show and Code 39. His role as Lucas McCain became known as one of the best in TV westerns. Chuck was also a part of the show and hashtag 39's creation. With his huge height, strong body, and rugged good looks, Chuck was the perfect Western hero. He worked hard, both mentally and physically, to really become the character. So he could learn how to ride like an Old West cowboy. He grew a full beard and bought his first horse. In every episode of The Rifleman, Lucas McCain used his trusty Winchester gun to protect his son from danger. There was more to the show than just fights, though. A rancher and his kid had a close relationship that was shown in the story after the kid's death. No matter what problems came up each week, what really moved fans was the deep bond between Lucas and Mark. The Rifleman was a huge hit for many reasons, one of which was that Chuck Connors and his young co-star Johnny Crawford, who played Mark McCain, got along so well. Even though he was famous as a child star, Crawford won over his co-workers by being humble and polite. Gunfights and action scenes weren't the only things that made The Rifleman great. There were a lot of themes of honesty, fairness, and working for what's right. Lucas McCain stayed a man who sought justice and did his best, even though things were hard. A lot of people looked up to him because of this, especially the boys who looked up to this soft but strong father figure. In passing, the show also talked about how hard it is to be a single parent on the harsh border. In order to be a good parent to his young son, Lucas had to find a middle ground between being strict and loving. McCain stood out from other TV Western heroes of the time because he was both sensitive and strong, as played by Chuck in 39. One of the most interesting things about the movie and hashtag 39 was the handmade Winchester rifle that Lucas McCain made. Thanks to a special lever action, this one-of-a-kind gun could fire rounds at the speed of a machine gun. Chuck had to practice a lot to be able to do a good job of controlling this gun on screen. The gun almost became a character in the play because of the noise it made and how quickly it fired. Still, making The Rifleman took a lot of work. In order to get into the spirit of the Old West, the actors and team often had to work in hot, dusty conditions. Because he has a background in sports, it was a good fit for Chuck Connors to play the part and meet the physical demands of 39. There was more truth to the show because he did most of the tricks himself. The writers of the show did a lot of study on the 1880s so that viewers could really feel like they were there. They looked at the farmers' toolkits and took close notes on the clothes they wore. Thanks to the careful attention to detail, viewers were taken to the Old West with Lucas and Mark McCain. There were 5 seasons of The Rifleman, with a total of 168 episodes from 1958 to 1963. At this point, the show was at its most famous and started to take over TV. Because he played the brave and honest Lucas McCain, Chuck Connors became well known to millions of fans. Because of how well the show and hashtag 39 did, Chuck was able to look into many new opportunities. He started getting offers for parts in movies and TV shows. Still, a lot of his fans will always think of him as the brave rifleman Lucas McCain who fought for his son and praised justice in the Wild West. It was clear that Chuck and Code 39 were dedicated to their roles. He practiced a lot with the handmade Winchester that McCain used on screen. This commitment showed how professional Chuck and hashtag 39 were and made the presentation more realistic. A lot of athletes came on Chuck and Code 39's show because he loved sports so much. Duke Snider, Sid Gilman, and Don Drysdale were all guests on The Rifleman. For Chuck, this was a great chance to blend his two loves, acting and sports. Sports fans were enthralled by these guest spots, which showed off Chuck and hashtag 39's wide range of skills. People had a hard time telling Chuck Connors apart from Lucas McCain by the time The Rifleman ended in 1963. When the show was over, Chuck had to deal with a problem. Tricks he can use when he's not playing Lucas McCain to draw attention away from those parts. Even though it was hard, playing McCain was a turning point in his career. Chuck Connors, an actor, is also very interested in politics. Chuck was a strong Republican, which made him different from many Hollywood stars. Even when he was just starting out, he spoke out in favor of Nixon and Reagan. In a field where a lot of people had more liberal views, this made him stand out. Surprisingly, Chuck became close with Leonid Brezhnev, the leader of the Soviet Union. The Rifleman and other westerns were Brezhnev and Code 39's favorite TV shows. Even though their countries had bad feelings toward each other during the Cold War, they were able to get past that and become friends because they both loved Western culture. When he was in Russia in 1973, Chuck gave Brezhnev a pair of one-of-a-kind Colt revolvers. This showed that their friendship was growing. At least some people say that Chuck helped Nixon and Brezhnev talk to each other in secret. Pushing for the U.S. and the USSR to get along better, Chuck was a proud Republican who stood by his beliefs. People like him backed Barry Goldwater when he ran for president in 1964. Even though Hollywood was strongly against it, Chuck did go to protests in support of the Vietnam War, though. He was a strong booster of the military. Back when Ronald Reagan and 39 were running for governor of California and president, Chuck was a big fan of them. He did not think that his jobs as an actor and a political campaigner were at odds with each other. People who knew Chuck well say that he loved his country very much and thought that his political views had no place in the entertainment business. Chuck was very proud of how well he played the conservative Lucas McCain in the movie The Rifleman. In his part on the show, he played a good dad who cared about family and justice. Even though Chuck's real life was complicated, he thought this figure reflected his views. Chuck wasn't afraid to say that he didn't agree with the Vietnam War in Hollywood, where a lot of people had liberal views. He wasn't afraid to say that he didn't agree with some views. He was even given roles in comedy shows that made fun of Westerns, or Chuck in 33's role from The Rifleman. But he said no. He was determined to protect Lucas McCain's image and everything that the character stood for. Some say that Chuck had trouble getting parts in Hollywood for a while because of the controversial things he said. This shows how dangerous it can be to have different opinions in the entertainment business. There is, however, something you didn't know. Things were not easy in the personal lives of Chuck Connors and Code 39, even though he is famous for playing good guys on TV and has strong political views. In real life, Chuck Connors was not at all like the dad he played on TV. In 1948, he married Elizabeth Rell after they met at a baseball game in Canada. After 13 years of marriage, they had 4 boys. Even though the family looked happy, Chuck was cheating on his wife. Several children were said to have been born to him from relationships with other women. He lived a much more public life in Hollywood than the family man he played on TV. People found out that Chuck had affairs with other women while he was wearing his wedding band. He got female fans and artists to work with him by using his fame and good looks to his advantage. Elizabeth knew that he was cheating on her, but she couldn't do anything about it. What Chuck and hashtag 39 did to them broke up their marriage, but they put on a good show for everyone else. When Chuck and Elizabeth filed for divorce in 1962, the end of their troubled marriage was near. After a year, Chuck got married again. Kamala Devi, an Indian actor, became his new wife. There were some problems with this union, which was a shame. For more than 10 years after the fact, people still said that Chuck and 39 were cheating on each other. People said he was violent even in his own house. All of this put their marriage to the test in a big way. People who worked with Chuck and hashtag 39 said he had a lot of different characters. He was sometimes very nice, but there were also times when he was mean. He showed how complicated he was in this. A lot of people didn't know how they felt about him. In real life and in his relationships, he had a lot of problems, even though he played the hero on TV. Chuck started going out with much younger people in the 1970s when he was 50 years old. He used his fame as the Rifleman to get together with young women in their 20s who were models or wanted to be artists. Many people in Hollywood were interested and worried about his relationships with women much younger than him.